they would instantly put you in the no pile because you do not have a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even with the sheriff's department here now, you have to have a college degree in order to get in because it's become the norm, you know.
Hmm.
So, but anyways, so you guys want to get this thing going?
Sure.
Sure, let's do it.
So the topic of conversation. By the way, we'll go ahead and just start it officially. I guess this is going to be podcast number 2. It is myself. My name is Elohim or Adam. We're here on Twitch.tv. With me is Co Carnage. Go ahead and say hello, Co.
Hey, everybody. I'm Co Carnage, also Ben.
And MMOdin, who's also known as Limpy.
What's going on, guys?
So I believe the topic of conversation today is, I believe it was in the realm of MMOs and what we want to see coming out in MMOs and what we have seen that we don't like and what we do like. So I think we're just going to discuss releases or even ideas for MMOs that could maybe improve them, or make them more interesting. I know I have my thoughts on this. Like, I've been thinking about it for, I mean, I'm a huge MMO enthusiast. All three of us are, I know that. But I kind of want to hear from you guys first. So either one of you guys.
Go ahead, Co.
Well, I mean, there's no question that in the last decade, the only kind of MMO to have stayed around in a permanent fashion has been WoW. Every other MMO goes through phases where they rise initially at the beginning and they fall very, very sharply, usually within weeks later. That fall has been from various reasons. Sometimes it has to do with exploits, sometimes it's content related, sometimes it's just straight bugs. But it is kind of interesting to take an account of why these MMOs are failing and what it is about them that's preventing them from raising to the level that everyone wants them to, which is up to the WoW standard.
Well, let me throw this out. Let me start with a question. Do you think that players' expectations defeat games before they're even released?
Yes.
I go ahead, Limpy, please take this one.
I do, and I think there's a lot of things at fault there. I think the gaming companies are at fault there. I think the expectations of players are at fault there, and the expectations of players have been kind of set by it's kind of the I don't want to even say this, but I'm going to. It's like the wow factor, right? You have this game that has just an immense plethora of content on both sides, PvE and PvP. So every single time a game comes out, you hear it, it's like wow clone, wow clone. The reason that a game like League of Legends has been able to take and kind of grow the way it has is because it's a completely different genre. Additionally, the gaming companies are at fault because and you know this is one place that Final Fantasy 14 I think they actually did it right was by limiting their closed and open betas. You know, when World of Warcraft was in closed and open, or just closed beta, it went closed beta right to launch. It was very limited to get in. So you didn't have everybody having access to this game, nor did you have people paying money for closed beta, unless you were buying a key or an account or something like that off somebody on eBay. So what you had is you have this situation where gamers are like open beta. That's that's the game. That's what it's supposed to be. Neverwinter. Look at Neverwinter. Neverwinter's biggest failure was the fact that open beta was like launch, and then it had all these problems. People spent all this money, and they just basically said, "Oh, forget that." So it's kind of this wow factor where there's all this content, this PvP that's really good, stuff like that, and then you have this scenario where you've just end game content is just so immense that no game can really launch with that much end game content, and it's create all of these factors to me are creating a problem inside of the industry, and then yeah, gamers just have unreal expectations out of a new game.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's video games. We have an evolutionary process here with video games, and when we started at the beginning, it was like, okay, we are totally wowed by the fact that we have these two paddles and a ball, and we're able to knock it against each other, and if it gets past, you get a point. We're like, wow, revolutionary, like, it's crazy. So then, you go a little further on, and, games come out, whatever, 10 years later, now we have MMOs, and okay, you jump in and you can make a character and it's really cool, and oh my gosh, EverQuest, and Ultima, some of the first ones, and even the MUDs before
Hmm.
that, were amazing, and people love those and everything. But as times progress and time's gone on, I think what the expectation of a gamer is really, really, really difficult for a company to provide for, and it's very difficult to be successful, when you have all these demands. Because when we jump into a game now in an MMO, we expect certain things. I mean, bottom line, minimum certain things. We expect sandbox worlds. We want to be able to run around and do what we want to do. We expect multiple classes, okay, and even sometimes subclasses to those classes. We expect all these races. We expect robust combat systems. Like, we expect so much that these gaming companies are putting so much money into keeping up just with what we're expecting. Because each time a game is released with a little bit more, that becomes the norm. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
it's so, I can imagine how difficult it is for a gaming company to meet just the minimal amount of demands. Not even talking about doing something revolutionary or making the wheel better, basically not reinventing it, but like making combat systems better. It blows my mind to think how difficult that is. And I always keep in mind, whenever a game comes out and it fails, is this the game? Like, I always have this in my mind, like, is it the game's fault? Is it a good game? Or is it just that we just expect so much now? Like, we just want so much that it's causing us to kind of overthink it, maybe, or over expect or overhype ourselves. I don't know. That's always
Hmm.
my thought whenever I think a game when a game comes out. Sometimes, a lot of times, I fail. I'm just like, people just expect so much out of these games now.
Well, and especially, I mean, and this kind of goes back to the first thing about how managing expectations for the audience. The unfortunate comparison that is always going to come up from here until the end of time is, people comparing it to World of Warcraft. And it's unfortunate that we can't pause time and kind of say, okay, well, to be fair, never compare it to World of Warcraft. Only compare it to World of Warcraft vanilla when it came out and what it had at that time. Because I mean, not only is just making an MMO in general an insanely hard thing to do, there's so many moving parts in an MMO that have to work in unison and perfectly for everything to work properly, that if one of them fails, your whole project's going under. And
Hmm.
just to make sure all those are working properly, let alone well, is something that is just, it's a huge task to manage.
And a risk too, a
Yeah,
huge
and
risk.
it's one of the reasons we only see these big companies coming from, or these big MMOs coming from big companies that just have huge amounts of money behind them, and the companies that try to do it by themselves, a la Darkfall, if you guys have heard of that game,
Yep.
become a buggy mess that they can't do because there's simply the scope of the project is huge. The other unfortunate thing is, unlike other games, you can patch games and you can have expansions and you can have DLC. But an MMORPG is in a world of its own. An MMORPG, by definition, is an unfinished product and is never completed. And that's
Right. It's
because
ever evolving.
exactly
It's a game that should not end.
exactly, and players are always going to want to expect more. They play the game looking forward to things that aren't even announced yet. They play these games looking forward to things that they haven't seen. And a lot of times the reasons people get to max level is because they want to be ready for the new stuff coming out. And other games just don't have that standard held to them, and it's really to these new MMOs' detriment. Because the first thing that you say now is you get a spec sheet for a new MMO, WildStar, ESO, EQ Next. You always ask the same questions. Oh, is it open world? Does it have PvP? Does it have housing? What's the leveling system like? Does it have multiple class? Like there's just a list of almost like standard questions that are asked,
Right.
and
And even with the
and
PvP, it's like, does it have multiple modes? Does it have arena? Does it have
Yeah.
battlegrounds?
yeah.
I mean, it's like, and that's one of the things that I think people have stated that WoW has done so well. It's like you get to max level, and then there's a whole new game
It's
there.
like a second game. It's like
Right.
there's a second game waiting for you at max level.
Yeah. Well, let's segue a little bit. So we talked about a little bit about MMOs releasing and expectations and stuff like that. What do you want as a gamer? Like, what do you not just like what do you if you want all these modes and stuff like that, but what are you looking forward to seeing in upcoming MMOs, like that's going to excite you or get you pumped for the game that's coming out? I mean, for me it's kind of a I don't want them to reinvent the wheel. I know I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I don't want them to do that. I think that it's worked for very, very many years. Your tank, healer, DPS.
Your Trinity.
Your
Yeah.
Trinity. I look at games like Guild Wars 2 that try to like revolutionize things. Like every MMO wants to come out and like revolutionize things, and I get that and I understand. And for a certain amount of testing and for evolution to occur, we need that. In the games, but I think that we have gotten to a place where we just want to do something so new that we're not paying attention to the basics and the fundamentals. I want to see a game released that takes what we love, what we've loved for 30 years, starting with Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and make it better. I want to see it better. I want to see like Neverwinter. I applaud Neverwinter. It's a free-to-play MMO, and it had a combat system that was so fun, And now it didn't fall into the Holy Trinity, It didn't, but it did. It did take combat, what we would consider normal combat for an MMO, and they took it to the next level. And I think that a lot of other companies are on that too. Like WildStar's looks like WildStar's combat system is very similar. This active combat, you've got the regular. It used to be like hiya, 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 and they just kind of went back and forth, on each other. Now it's, oh, there's an AoE on the ground. I need to make sure I'm out of the way of that. Oh, we have positioning on the target. We do more damage from behind or from the flank, stuff like that. And I want to see that evolve just on fundamental levels, instead of being like, oh, we're going to have this new thing where everyone can turn into dragons, or like whatever. I don't want to see like these crazy new ideas. I just want to see the good ideas
Done well.
done well. Exactly.
See, I think,
That's a great point.
Yeah, I've told this to my guys in the stream. I said my biggest wish would be to have endgame and PvP like World of Warcraft, class systems, and world events like Rift, and the combat of Neverwinter.
Yeah. Now we're picking apart all of them and putting them into a Frankenstein.
Well, no, we are,
yes.
but I mean, you think about it; those are things that those individual games do very, very well.
Absolutely.
And you asked the question, what games are we really looking forward to, and that we think may do that? And for me, I'm really, really trying to hold my expectations down as low as I possibly can, because it's such an ambitious project. And the announcement for me, when they announced EverQuest Next, and they were talking about the emergent artificial intelligence, where basically they're just going to take NPCs, they're going to give them artificial intelligence, and then they're just going to drop them into the world, and then those NPCs will start to react based upon how the world reacts to them being there. That, to me, is exciting.
Oh, dude, I'm right there with you, 100%.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the thing where you sit there and we're sitting there saying, we don't want to see evolution. We want to see things done well. That is an evolution of a thing that's been done well.
Exactly.
If you know what I mean.
No. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about exactly, they made an announcement for EverQuest Next, and they talked about this specifically. What have we always wanted to do that we've never been able to do for an MMO? And one of the things that he's talking about is, normally in MMOs you have static mobs. Okay, you set up, this goblin camp is here, and when you kill this goblin, in 15 minutes the goblin will respawn and the goblin will be there. You can always count on the goblin being there, the goblin camp in that zone or that quadrant of the sandbox world that you're in, because that's where they put them. Now, EverQuest Next, this is again a great example by Limpy of a company taking fundamentals and making them better. What EverQuest is now doing is giving properties, okay, giving certain likes and dislikes to certain NPCs. Let's say an orc. An orc will dislike population. It will dislike busy, cities or intersections. What an orc does like is gold. What an orc does like is fighting people, multiple orcs versus one person. So instead of placing the orcs, in one place, they're going to put the orcs into the world, and the orcs will populate it based on their likes and dislikes. So don't be surprised if you're going to go down a back alley dirt road that isn't really used, and you get attacked by a bunch of orcs because the orcs have started a small little encampment there because that's what they like to do. And so you're never going to end up in a place where, okay, we want to fight orcs, let's go right here at this place, because even if they do set up a campment, let's say some people come in and wipe them out, or some guards start patrolling because there's more reports of travelers being attacked or whatever. The guards will come in and clear them out, and they'll repopulate somewhere else. And like every NPC has likes and dislikes that's going to populate this world, and that's a perfect example.
And don't forget that there's going to be quests based upon that. So you're going to have those orcs set up outside, and then there will be dynamic quests that NPCs inside the town will then say to you, I need you to go out and take care of this orc brigade. You go out, you take care of it. Well, if you take care enough of them, they're going to be like, well, forget this. They go back to like their main encampment, tell the orc chieftain, and the orc chieftain says, well, forget this. We're now going to raid the city, and it creates this huge event that happens inside the game. So, but I don't want to gobble up too much. I want to hear the likes and dislikes and stuff from Co.
Oh, well, no, I'm excited about the same stuff. Like the fact that they're adding an entire level of AI to the mob system is huge. I mean, I'm an EQ1 kid. I spent more time in Wrath than I did the real world when I was growing up. And for me, it was all about going to East Commons. And, is Orc 1, Orc 2, and Orc 3 camped? Oh, okay. Let me go
Yep, me too.
You see if the Dervs are camped. Oh, is anyone camping Kisdi and Gix? Okay, well, let me go to South Row. And it's
Griffin on the road. Griffin on the road.
Exactly.
On the road.
Got sand giants out there.
Sand giants coming through. Somebody's training them to docks. We're in Oasis.
Exactly. And what's funny is now I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV, and it's exactly the same way. Here we are over a decade later. And it's the exact same system. Oh, do you need these mobs? Okay, well, they're in this little circle on your map right over here. They're always going to be there. They're never not going to be there. And that's it. But and Limpy, this goes back to what you were saying, and I couldn't agree more. It's one of those evolutions. That kind of thing is going to change how MMOs are played. When you don't have a static place to go, when players can't just lean back with a beer in the afternoon and do the same thing they did on 3 other characters in the exact same places. It's always going to be new and different. And like for instance, there won't be that shouting for orc camp, because the orc camp could be anywhere. You're going to have to go out and find the orc camp, and it's going to be in a place that wasn't traveled much that day. I mean, that's huge. That adds a whole different level to the gameplay that is frankly very much needed, in my opinion.
Well, it causes you to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It causes you to get people together. It's unknown, and it's ever changing, and therefore you have a dynamic system. And when you have that, and the thing, everybody knows this about MMOs, and if you don't, you should. It's never about the end. It's never about the end. It's about the journey. It's about the experiences that you create with other people in the environment that you're put in.
It's about making your own story in a world that's been set up for thousands of stories.
And that brings me to my next point. Something MMOden, I think he asked me what I dislike about things is this whole thing about, okay, I totally agree with you, making your own story. That I support 100%. What I don't like is games like MMOs having a main storyline. Okay? Like Final Fantasy XIV, I hate that aspect. I do not care about your main storyline. Do not force me. I hate when MMOs force me to follow a main storyline and get my character involved, and your character's so important, and all this stuff like
hero syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And Star Wars Galaxies was I love the setup, don't get me wrong, but it did that so wrong. They always want to make everybody in an MMO feel like they're the hero. You know, like I don't think the game should ever have to make you try to feel like the hero. Like I was running around as a Jedi, okay? And they're like, "Oh, there's so and so, the Jedi. He's so cool and you're the hero. You're always the hero." Man, being a Jedi wasn't even about that. Like being a Jedi is not about being a hero. It's about being a peacekeeper and all this stuff. But anyways, I digress. The thing is I want to make my own story. The people that I surround myself in my server, the population of my server, when I'm a hero, it's because other people know about me. It's the story I create. It's the deeds and the things that I do while I'm in your world that makes it so that your NPC people don't have to view me as a hero. That the other players will view me as a hero. Or maybe other players will view me as a villain. Or maybe the other players will view me as nothing because they've never even heard about me. And that's the story. They don't have to cultivate a story. The community, as they play their characters, cultivate their own story. And I hate it. I hate it when games try to make you go, because I don't care. Like I don't care about my main character. All I think is that 1,000 billion trillion million other people, by the way, that's a really large number, are doing the same exact thing that I'm doing, being called the hero, being, oh, you saved the day. It's like, no, I didn't. Like 1,000 billion trillion other people just saved the day too. Like it's like everybody's a hero, like, no, it's not.
It's injecting a single-player game into an MMO.
Exactly.
And that's what main stories are. And see, it's kind of interesting, Elo, because my opinion is not exactly like yours on that. I think that there should be main story quests, but I don't believe that they should be necessary to the game.
I can see that, yeah.
My father, actually, over 60 years old, had 3 max-level characters in Star Wars Tour and 4 in Guild Wars 2. He's not even an MMOer. All he would do is do the main story quest stuff. That's it. He liked the engagement. He liked the cutscenes. He wasn't so much into going out and finding groups and raiding and PvPing, but he loved being able to experience a well-told story with other people in the same world. But at the same time, like, and Final Fantasy is really bad about this. For Final Fantasy, for instance, that's the main game I'm playing right now. To get to the end game instances, you have to complete the main story. You have to. And it's to the point where the main story is like a 50-hour epic. I mean, it is ridiculous. And if you don't want to do that story, you're in for a bad time.
Yeah. Well, like EverQuest used to do the epic weapon quests and stuff. Like, I don't mind epic storylines and like it allowing you to choose whether or not you want to go on this and then rewarding you for doing it. I'm fine with that. But like you said, you couldn't have said it any better. I don't like them trying to insert a single-player game into my MMOs. I feel like it's misplaced. So
and it's it's a completely different thing when you're doing an epic quest line to get a weapon that lots of other people have, and it's just this big, great compliment to what you're doing. It's a totally different thing for you to be the reason the world is saved, and thank God you were here, and we'll all be fine because of it. Really? Because there's like 1,000 other people on this server. How many problems could there possibly be? You know what I mean? It's just it feels kind of ridiculous.
I think you guys bring up a very valid point, and it's something that I 100% agree with. It's like I want to play the game, and this is unfortunately, to refer back to WoW, this is something they've actually done very well. You can, in World of Warcraft, pick and choose exactly how you want to play the game. And that's something that players like. If you want to level up to max level just doing PvP, you can do that. If you want to level up, just taking and running just random quests or doing dailies or whatever, those are things that you can do, and that really makes the game kind of stand out for some people, because some people, like you said, they just don't like the storyline. Yep. So I agree with both of you that give me a storyline in a game, because there are people that like it, and I understand that you have to kind of cater to different types of game style play, but don't make it necessary. Now, the difficulty with Final Fantasy is known for that. That's what they do. That's their thing. So it's tough to sit there and say that, but at the same time, like you said, you must do it. It is an imperative. You have to do it. You have no choice. And that part, I agree with you. I don't like that.
Well, here, I have an interest. I told myself I wouldn't take any questions from my chat, but I did see this kind of interesting question. Choir Starter says, surely you need to have that overarching storyline, though, to make you appreciate the world that you're in and make you feel a part of it. And that's an interesting question. I kind of look at it like this. Stephen King, okay, one of the best authors of our time, okay, most famous authors of our time. He has a book called On Writing, and it's basically about writing, and he talks about the differences in people's writing and what is good writing and what is bad writing to his, in his opinion. And he makes an example. When you come in and you say, okay, the man walked in angrily and, threw his coat on the ground. You have no misconceptions about what that guy was doing. You know that he was angry. It says it right there. But there's a certain subtlety to saying the man walked in, the man walked into the room and slammed the door, and threw his coat on the ground. Now, you can understand by what is being presented to you that the man is angry. You're not having to be told. You're not having to be told this. And I think the same concept is good for MMOs. There's a way to get you involved in the world and get you caring about the world and the NPCs without having to cram it down your throat and tell you exactly how it's supposed to happen. Does that make sense? Am I making sense, guys?
Oh, for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. But I take that a step further. What kind of thing could an MMO do to do that?
Well, if I knew that, I'd probably be in the game industry. No, but it could be something as subtle as, instead of sending you, like you said, on a main story quest. I like in MMOs when things happen and I don't expect them to. Like, okay, I've gone out into this zone and I'm going to run over here and kill these beetles until I'm level 5, okay? But like, let's say I go over and I walk over to the beetles and all of a sudden this guy runs up to me and he says, "Oh my God, my cottage is being attacked by beetles. Can you help me out?" Now that's kind of more static, and Guild Wars 2 tried to do that, having these like open world quests where you could walk through a zone and then this happened kind of randomly, and it was kind of a scripted thing. And then this thing would work off of this thing. Let's say that you don't get over there and help him in time. Okay, the beetles take over this. And, this is talked about in EverQuest Next as well. Dynamic events working off of each other, and they kind of went in this. Instead of placing me in a world where you say you have to do this main quest, I would like it to be more subtle in the fact that as I'm moving around and doing things and making my own decisions, that things are reacting around me and opportunities are presenting themselves that I can choose or not choose to participate in. Does that kind of make sense?
Sure, it's like Fates.
Organic game world.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it's kind of like the in Final Fantasy. It's like the Fate system.
Yeah. Now let's take a step further. Let's say that I did help this man. And he's like, "Oh, thank God, my name's Tim the farmer, whatever, and here's 5 gold. Thanks for helping me with the beetles." Okay. Now let's say then at level 50, let's say, what if a game kept up with that? It's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do. Let's say that they kept up with the fact that your hero helped this, Tim the farmer. And let's say in 30 levels, you happen to go back by the cottage, and Tim approaches you. "Hey, you're that adventurer that helped me that long time ago. Oh, it's so good to see you. This is my wife, so and so," and just introduce themselves. Let's say you get nothing from it. Let's just say they introduced themselves, but they remembered you. And they're reacting, and that could happen with anything. Let's say you save him, and then he says, "Hey, I came across an inheritance. Here's another, 2,000 gold. Thanks for helping me way back then." That kind of thing. Now, this is getting more complicated as I'm talking about it, but it's ways of building up and making you care about the world that you're in without necessarily forcing it down your throat. And it seems like
I hate
Next was talking about that. Go ahead.
It's almost like Skyrim, which gives you that really personal experience. You complete something at some point in the world, you go to another town, someone you've never met comes up to you and is like, "Hey, you're that guy that helped in Dragon Run. Dude, this is awesome. My daughter was there. You saved her. Here's 500 gold." And it's like, whoa, that was meaningful what I did. It wasn't just some like random act.
Yeah. And things develop around your character like that, and not only just with NPCs, but also the community too. Like you can listen. Some of my most amazing experiences happening in MMOs have nothing to do with NPCs or quests or really, I mean, the role that they put us in, obviously, but it's all with the players. Like, all my best experiences come from players and interactions with players and things that happened with players. I can give you a billion stories that I ran into this person and this happened and we did this and oh my God, I remember exactly what he said to me and then we did this and then these guys chased us like, oh, okay, cool. But like, I don't think I've ever been in an MMO and went like, oh, remember that time we went up and walked up to that NPC and he was like, hey guys, go get us some rat tails. And we were like, yeah, and we did it and we brought him back and we turned in. That was a great time. Like, I don't ever remember stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, EverQuest Next has talked about doing that with their dynamic events, right? It's going to be like you have these massive things that happen in the game world, but they'll only happen one time.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, somebody made a comment in my chat, and they said the smartest way to do that is take like the reputation systems that exist in game and make them actually mean more than just unlocking the next tier of items. You know, when you do get too honorable with Freeport, you walk in and the NPCs are like, oh, it's the Honorable Limpy. Everybody 3 cheers. He saved us from, you know, the infernal rats that were plaguing our sewers. You know, all that crap can happen. It's really not that hard.
No, it's actually kind of interesting because I actually said the same thing as you did, Elo, but about not taking questions. But somebody in my chat, Xcar, actually one of the raid leaders, has brought up the very good point. I don't know if you guys have seen the anime Sword Art Online.
I have.
But they kind of extrapolate that concept out further to where the players to actually participate fundamentally in the game don't even need to participate in combat. Where it's, you know, you can be a shopkeeper and a store owner. They're making their own story and they're living, and it's just as important as the other people. But at the same time, they're very clear. You know, they're not going to have a main story quest. They're not going to have the rails that someone that would go out and adventuring, just like in every other MMO. You know, it's very much your own story, your own goals, and then you can set more importantly, you can set your own goals and then achieve them for personal satisfaction instead of completing someone else's goals and then having them tell you you should feel good about what you've done.
Yeah, I went and saw a seminar, or he was a keynote speaker, Richard Garriott, who, Lord British, the father of MMOs, if you will. He did a keynote speech at Dragon Con 2 years ago, and I went and sat through that, and it was like an evolution of gaming. And he made an excellent point about Ultima Online. And he said, you know what? You know, in Ultima Online, you didn't have to be the adventurer. There were people that got on and raised animals, that had shops, that did all that. And he said, you know what? There is a large percent of the community that doesn't necessarily want to go out and kill things and be the hero. There is a large percent of people who just want to own a tavern or just want to be a gatherer or a trade skill, have a trade skill, stuff like that. And he tied in his point with today's gamers, and he's like, what do you guys think are some of the most popular games, out there right now? And, some people said, oh, this game, they're naming these like really high priced PC games. And he's like, what about Farmville? He's like, what about Farmville? Like Farmville, this game that you don't really think about as a video game. But 2 years ago, and even still today, there is a large percent of people who go on Facebook just to play Farmville and to just be a farmer. And that's all they want to do. And he's got a new game. Actually, I backed the Kickstarter. It's going to be Shroud of the Avatar. And his thing is going to be based on that. He's done a lot of stuff on it. If you guys don't know anything about it, you should look it up. And he's talking about people... if you want to be a warrior, go out and be a warrior. Go kill stuff, whatever. If you want to gather things, gather things and bring them back. Sell them to the merchants. The merchants are going to be the players. And the players are going to set up their shops. And so let's say you go out and get a bunch of ore. You can go back and sell it to, the blacksmith. The blacksmith takes whatever, ore you have. Then he starts making weapons and he sells the weapons. And then, and you cultivate a whole community of people who just want to play different roles. And again, it goes right into what you were saying, that thing that, doing what you want to do in the world instead of being told what you have to do. And
the difficulty I have with that stuff is if you don't get the player generated stuff, then you end up in this scenario where you have a dead world.
Yeah.
It's chicken and egg, right? If you get it, great. It's amazing. If you don't get it, the game is screwed.
Yeah, and I can see that absolutely. What if nobody picks up a blacksmith hammer, and doesn't
Right.
start making the weapons, But I don't know. I'd have a hard time believing that somebody wouldn't. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
it's an interesting dichotomy. It almost goes to kind of the American capitalist theory, where if there is a need for something, someone will fill that need because it is in their benefit to do it. If you give the player a reason to do it that is
Right.
beneficial, someone out there will capitalize on it.
Yes.
yeah,
So as long as that reason's there, I mean that's like in EQ1. I mean, back in the day when chanters charged for clarity, and you'd have to
Mhm.
tip druids for sword, for
man,
sow.
Kodiak's
And
endless
thorns.
intellect.
Well,
Yes.
it's kind of it's if the market is there and the economy will capitalize it, then it will become capitalized. And I mean, think of it these days. That idea is ridiculous. The idea of charging for a recoverable resource like mana these days is ridiculous. But back then, it was one of the biggest forms of money exchange.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, everyone wanted it, and the people that had it all came to an agreement to charge for it, and that's just what happened. And if people didn't, they got yelled and shouted out of the community. That works opposite as well. If there's something
It's
out
like
there that
gas
people
stations.
want, and they're going, I want this. We want these well-crafted weapons. This is what we want. From crafters. It's in the crafter's interest to do it at that point.
yeah. And I remember being a druid. That was my main as a druid, and I would spend hours just teleporting people for buku money, just
Yeah.
transportation.
Taxis.
Transfer
yeah.
is something that we jump into a game and now we have waypoints and fly points and we have, hearthstones and all that stuff like that. It's like, I'm sorry, you have one bind point, and if you want to get anywhere else in this world, you're going to need to seek out other players to
And
teleport you.
not only that, you can't teleport back to the bind point. You need to find a wizard to teleport you back to your bind
Yeah,
point, or be
yeah.
a different class to do it.
But
I mean, I
they
love
made
it.
it work. They
One
made
of-
it work. They had East Commons and a lot of servers hooked up as like a makeshift auction house venue. People just shouted out their OOC. I've got this, this and this trading, want to buy, all that stuff. And people kind of filled those roles automatically based on what they were giving. So I don't know. I have to rebuttal, with what you said, Limpy, unless I misunderstood. And I got to say that I think people will fill those roles even when they're not, even when they're not presented, in some cases. Like, people will find a way, given the tools that they want. You want a class, you want to make it around, you give two classes teleportation, and then they start become taxi drivers, and they start making that money off of that.
Right, but
And
it takes full cooperation of the community, which we all know, all three of us know, has gotten more trolly,
yeah,
and it takes full cooperation of the game to take. And here's the problem, your first question was, have the expectations been set too high?
mhm,
And this goes to, yeah, because guess what happens if all of a sudden a bunch of people run into a game and there's no travel options and they've got to wait to travel around? They're going to piss and moan and they're going to walk away from the game.
yeah,
So I get exactly what both of you guys are saying, especially with the cooperate. If the gamers cooperate and understand that this is going to be a little bit more hardcore, okay, and it will work. But the gamers have been so spoiled. It's like anything. It's a Pandora's box. Once you open that box, it's tough to close.
Well, and I attribute a lot of that. I attribute almost all of it to World of Warcraft, for better or for worse at the time.
Sure.
They capitalized on the now generation mentality of MMOs. We used to not be given all those stuff. We used to have to run back to our corpse and grab. We're so old fogies. We're like, kids, walk around.
Dude, could you imagine the outrage today if there was a train to a spot where people hung out, and all of a sudden it wiped all of them, and all of them lost experience and lost a level? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Reddit might actually explode.
Yeah.
It probably would. It probably would. No, I mean it's interesting you guys say that because it's those events and working through them are for me some of the most memorable times I have in MMOs. I'll never forget. I'm 14 years old. It's 10 o'clock at night, way past my bedtime. And
What was this
and my
last
dad's
year?
been ragging at me to go to bed. Yeah, last year. It's last year. And it's 10 o'clock. I'm already supposed to be in bed, and I'm running through this place called Kithakor Forest on my level 11 mage, or wizard, and I die. And you had 30 minutes if you were under level 15 in that game to get back to your corpse, get back your experience, and every single piece of equipment you had on you. And it's not often that a game will give you a palpable emotion, something really make you feel something. But
Sure.
that happens. My dad walks in 5 minutes later, and hey, you got to go to bed. I'm going to unplug the modem, and I'm just like, what? But my stuff. It's all it's 30 minutes. What am I? Like just complete freak out because there was something there that you could actually lose. You can't do that in MMOs anymore.
Yeah.
And there's safety nets everywhere. I mean, even if you let your corpse rot, okay, it's a little bit of experience, even, and they don't even do experience takeaway anymore. Now it's like debt. The worst they're going to give you is debt. You may earn a little bit less experience moving forward, and you'll get all your gear back in the mail, or just some stuff like that. And on that same note, again with that palpable emotion, I'll never forget having to travel by boat between West Freeport and Butcher Block Mountains.
That's right.
And having to sit your ass on that boat for 25 minutes through the ocean of tears. And it's like...
And it was the ocean of tears. If you made it through the zones and didn't fall off the boat.
Exactly. But it's like when you get there, it's a completely different feeling. It's I made it.
Right.
I just worked for it. I found all this stuff. No one told me how to get there. I found the docks myself. I waited for the boat. I got on the boat. I traveled there, and now I am here. And it's a completely different feeling. Today, you just run through the game world. Oh, where do I bind? Where do Okay, good. I'm bound here. Where's the teleporter? Okay, right click. Good, I'm good. Now I can come here whenever I want. It's like it. Because of the kind of dumbing down that has come from all of these other MMOs, it's almost like a one-way. It's like a one-way journey.
Well, it's not just MMOs though.
Now that we've been doing all that, and you're right. Actually, the Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls series is a perfect example of what you're just saying. But now that we've gone down that focus, now that it's been dumbed down, anyone that kind of goes against that is going to cause problems. I mean, like you can't do that in an MMO anymore without people complaining.
Well, one of the creators of WoW, I forget. I was reading an article and I don't know the stipulations, but I remember quite specifically him saying that he regrets everything that he did with WoW because he feels like he killed his favorite genre game. He feels like he killed it because they just made it so easy. Look at a game like, and I said, not just MMOs, every game has gotten way easy to play. If you go back and play those old like NES games, they are ridiculously hard now, like compared to games
Yeah,
today.
they are.
And here's the thing is that's why, but here's my one disagreement with that. Like if you go against the grain, people dislike it. Dark Souls. This is out of MMOs, but Dark Souls did it. It did it. It made a game hard again. It made a game challenging. It made a game get you riled up, and you felt something whenever you accomplished things. Like in that game, I have to applaud because it was relentless with the way that it treated its players, and I think people respect that. I think there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way, and somebody will figure it out to make things difficult in a way where you still make you still feel like you accomplished something, but mitigate all the uselessness and time wasting. Does that make sense? Because I think that's what the convenience of it is what makes people want to do it. Do I want to re-level my character because I lost a level because I got in a death loop at a bind point and the guards from the other opposing faction are killing me repeatedly? Like, no, I don't ever want to do that. But the thing is that we have to find a happy point where things don't. It's just so easy these days. It's so convenient, and I don't know where that's at.
The most revolutionary idea that I've possibly ever thought concerning MMOs. What if they had a classic mode that you could start the game in, and classic mode would disable teleporting. It would disable binding, significantly limit your mini map, while at the same time giving you like base bonuses to your character.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, they did the progression servers on EverQuest where the community started out in the base game, and you went in and you played the base game as it was. I mean, there's some bug tweaks and zones are different and stuff like that from the original, but you started at the beginning. And once you reached certain achievements, such as if you killed the first 2 dragons in the first game, it would unlock the next expansion pack after a couple of weeks. So after a couple of weeks, you get into the next expansion pack, and there would be things. So it's kind of similar, but you're talking about a similar thing. But I do love that idea, having like a classic, like have a hardcore mode and a hey, I play WoW mode. No offense to the WoW players out there.
A hardcore mode and a casual mode. Literally, hardcore and casual. Go ahead.
Yeah, here's the difficulty with these. I mean, these are great ideas. There actually are games out there like this. They do exist.
Like which ones?
They're just dead.
Oh,
and that's the problem. Is like I said, it's the chicken egg, the horse and the cart. It's like people have the same ideas, the stuff we're talking about today. They're like, this would be amazing. Go back to the old school stuff. And then what happens is they don't have any players to play the game, and then they shut down. And so it's a catch-22 because I mean, it's an amazing idea, but because the expectations have been set in a certain way already, it just doesn't stay that way. And so these games, there's one, I believe it's called Worm Online, WRM Online. That's hardcore to its core. And you go in there and there's not many people playing it. There's several of these games that exist on the market. It's just they don't have the player base. And so I like the idea of having a game that exists, but because they know this and these companies have this data on these games that have essentially been completely dead, they're going to sit there and say it becomes a business decision, and that's what sucks about it. It just becomes a business decision. Do we want to take and spend the resources that it's going to take to make this? How many players out there do we think that we will be able to attract by having this mode? Okay, it's going to be X, so it's going to cost us Y to be. Look, I don't want to try and bring business into this because I know that always sucks because you don't want to think that way when you want to be a gamer and you just want these things. But that's really what it ends up coming down to. Mm-hmm. Is this mode going to be profitable for us? Because in the end, they're not making these games because they just want to make us all happy. They're making these games because they make money.
Well, hold on, though. I do have to say, though, that EVE Online is a difficult game, and it's a very successful, difficult MMO. And I don't know why it seems to kind of make its way through and be so successful and still be so difficult, but it does. Now, let me pose a question to you, MMOden. What if Blizzard decided to make a hardcore game, like an old school game? Do you think it would work then? Because Blizzard has fanboys, and Blizzard is a monumental company in gaming. Like they are just so big. Let's say that they made it. Do you think that they could change? Do you think that they change things to make it so easy now? With World of Warcraft, do you think they could release a game and make it hard again and enjoyable just because they have the numbers and they could get the people in to do it?
Maybe, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I know they wouldn't do it because it's not going to make them the money that doing it the other way will.
The reason, and you have to remember the reason, I mean, even Ko brought this up earlier, and somebody brought it up in my chat too. The expectations are wrong with these newer games that come out because they really should be compared to vanilla WoW, not to the WoW of today. And there's a reason that they have. Look, I didn't think that the talent trees were that difficult, but they dumbed those down 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was the talent trees were really that hard to understand and put things together, but they dumbed those way down. And the reason that they continue to dumb these things down, and this is no disrespect to whatever age group we're talking to in this podcast, it's just you have younger players who, maybe they don't quite have like the ability to kind of comprehend all that stuff quite yet. You have female players who just want to jump in. They want something kind of simple. You have older male players who just want to kind of jump in and want something simple. So I'm not trying to pick and choose a different group here. You just have reasoning behind why they did these things. And so, and that's why they dumbed it down, because they knew that if they took and they dumbed it down, they would broaden their base, and that would end up being a larger revenue for them. And in turn, what did that allow them to do? It allowed them to bring in more money, hire more staff, make a bigger game, and now it's the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah,
that's true. I want to make an important distinction, though, at least in my opinion. Now, just like we were saying earlier about how World of Warcraft has gotten to a point where a player can enter the game with multiple different reasons. I want to play this game to PvP. I want to play this game to play with my Pokemon pets. I want to play this game to do 8-man rating, 25-man rating, 40-man rating. There's all of these different reasons you can play World of Warcraft, but none of those reasons is large-scale space combat, which I think, honestly, is one of the reasons that EVE does so well. EVE is a behind-the-scenes behemoth, and that is because it offers things that WoW simply can't, because because of the way it's fundamentally built.
Wait, hold on a second. You didn't hear about the new expansion for WoW?
I know, right? First humans in
Murlocs in space. You didn't hear about it?
Oh my God!
They're taking it to the final frontier, my friend.
If WoW were to do that, I hate saying it, they'd take some of EVE's pop. They would. There's no question. It's just like right now. Look at streaming on Twitch. Look at Magic: The Gathering. Look what happened to it after Hearthstone came out. That's World of Warcraft going, or that's the Blizzard guys going, hey, there's a market there. There's a market there. And guess what? Blizzard has this unannounced project called Titan.
Right.
What if that's it? What if that's targeting the EVE market? They're not stupid guys. They know what they're doing when they do this stuff. But it is very interesting, because where WoW does its absolute best, and actually I should say Blizzard in general, because because Blizzard, as you can see, it's not limited to WoW. Now with Hearthstone and what they're doing with Hearthstone, obviously they're making pushes on all fronts as to what can we get under our umbrella to offer to our player base that's comparable to other people. Oh, someone's telling me that Titan was scrapped.
Yeah, I heard that too.
No, that's not true. That's not true. It was rebooted.
Really?
And I have an opinion on that. And I believe that it was rebooted to take into consideration the changing market space in the combat engine. That is my theory. It was not scrapped. It was rebooted. They did pull a portion of the team off, but there is a portion of the team still on Titan, and it's being rebooted. And I think it's to reevaluate the marketplace and potentially see how they want to do things differently.
Do you think they just had the old WoW skill system, and now that there's more robust combat stuff out?
I think it was WoW with a new skin, and they realized that they can't just do that.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard much about. I mean, I did hear that it was scrapped, but then I did hear that it came back, and I'm not the only game I've ever known Blizzard to ever scrap, and there may be others, was Ghost, and that was the only. Huh?
Are you ready for this? There's actually another one, and so few people know about this. There was a Warcraft adventure game.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
The Thrall one, where you played as Thrall? Yeah.
That actually, do you guys know that actually was rolled into World of Warcraft?
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
That game was turned into World of Warcraft. That entire team, that entire development, everything was turned into World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that game, Warcraft Adventures, and you went. It was like Monkey Island, but with.
It was Warcraft. A side scroll, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a find this, go over here, talk to the adventure. Mm-hmm. It was an adventure game. But anyway, so here's the last question, then we'll wrap this thing up. One idea that you've had, if you can think of one idea that you've had for an MMO that you have never seen in an MMO that you would like to be implemented.
Oh,
Wish we would have got this.
I got a good one.
Go for it.
Okay, so this this goes into my whole thinking and reasoning. I mean, I'm in school for game design right now.
Okay.
You know, I on a daily basis I ask questions about why things are succeeding and why they're failing. And this is my true feeling about this. The next MMO that is released will release with the context and all required resources to have a monthly content release plan that they stick to and is released before the game goes live. I think right now one of the biggest problems with new MMOs is that players get into the game and they go, I want to do this. I want to do 40-man raiding. I want to do PvP. I want to do this, this, and this. And then they'll realize that it's either not there or it's not developed to the capacity that they want it to. If an MMO were to be released and right out of the gate, the company that makes this MMO is not only fully invested, but is 100% planned on having a consistent and foundationally sound content release schedule, that's an MMO I would invest my time in. If I see a company working hard to grow their world, I am almost willing to cut some corners to play that game. I am much more willing to give them the time to develop their vision. But all we've gotten from all of these companies for a decade now is just these games released as fast as they can. Many times they release unfinished or without good plans, or they just have these really amorphous, yeah, this will be in the first major update, or yeah, this will be in the big... That's not going to fly. I mean, right now, with Final Fantasy, and this is talking from experience, the 2.1 update is bringing so much. It's bringing fully fleshed out player housing. It's bringing a completely new arena PvP system. It's bringing 24-man raiding. All of these huge things are coming in the 2.1 update. But just like we talked about in previous, and I think it was the last podcast, or I know, Ella, that we've discussed this, about that fire inside of you and how if it goes out, the chances of you returning full time are just slim to none. Mm-hmm. The fact that they don't stagger these types of releases, the fact that we don't have an actual firm plan is really why these games never succeed. You've got to keep that fire lit. They should have released the game on, I'm just throwing out dates here, release the date on July 1st. Okay, August 1st, you're getting housing. September 1st, you're getting PvP. October 1st, you're getting 24-man raiding, and stick to it. Give the players something to look forward to in a structured fashion that is soon. Not this 3 to 4 month junk. That's too long for a standard MMO player to stay in a game. If you run, players like me, the 10 to 20 hour a day players, if we get to a point where we log into the game and there's nothing for us to do, then we immediately, the amount of interest you have in the game plummets. By the third day you've done that, that fire in you is dying. And it doesn't matter how good the game is at that point. But you give that person just the slightest carrot. You give that person, the capability to look forward to something they know is going to be there. And they will hang in longer, and that will keep that population up. They will keep it going. It will keep going, and you need those players that play 10 to 20 hours a day to keep those guilds and the games running well.
Well, and that has a lot to do with investors and stuff, but that's a whole nother conversation about investors and stuff. I can't wait to see Kickstarter games that are funded by viewers and fans instead of by investors. I think it's going to be interesting, but that's another discussion for another time. But I totally agree with you on that point. That would be nice to see, and I think we're going to see stuff like that more when people have funding, like I said, from fan bases instead of investors that are requiring them to come out with certain things even before they're ready. Neverwinter was a perfect example. We all know what happened. Perfect World took over Cryptic and forced them to release their game too early, basically. To make the money off of it, the early money off of it, and they did, and it could have been a really great game if they would just held off for a little bit, but that's not really what they want. But anyways, I digress. Do you have anything MMO that you want to see that has not been in an MMO yet that you would like to see implemented?
Well, this kind of goes back to, and I think, I've had this idea and you guys kind of touched on it. I want to be able to take and go through a game and through the quest line and through the storyline, but I want to do that in the hardcore mode that WoW has for their endgame dungeons. So I want to take, and I want to have not a permanent death mode, but I just want to be able to take and say, okay, look, I'm not, kind of a newbie to MMOs. I kind of understand what I'm doing here. I want things to be more challenging. I want them to be a little bit more difficult. It's basically going to structurally be the same game, except, the AI will probably be a little bit better on the monsters. They'll do a few more things, but obviously the rewards will be higher. But I'm not talking about just the dungeons. I'm talking about the entire game. Now, obviously, that takes some serious work, but I think that could kind of placate some of those people that are out there that want the hardcore, like a little bit harder idea there. And there could be some implementation of, upon death, you lose a little bit more, such as losing experience, but obviously the rewards are better and things like that. I'm really excited because there's things that I had kind of in my bag of tricks that I think EverQuest Next is touching on potentially being able to pull off, and if they can, it's going to be very exciting for me. The emergent AI, the world events that are going to happen, that are going to be not only PvE world events but also PvP world events, the landmark, the group or guild landmark, where you're going to be able to take and get plots that you're going to be able to bring your guild together and interconnect them and create this entire world, potentially even submitting that to Sony, and if Sony really likes it, they'll implement it into the game. That could potentially touch on what Co is talking about, where you actually have player-created content. And this was something that I was totally jazzed about with Neverwinter, was people being able to take their entire campaigns that they've maybe run in Dungeons and Dragons for 20 plus years, being able to implement that into the game of Neverwinter. I think they got about 20% there, and then they just kind of didn't go far enough with it. Being able to use that, but being able to not put boss monsters in there. There was just so many. There were too many holes there. So those are some of the things that I'm really looking forward to. And if EverQuest Next has an action-oriented combat style, which it looks like they will have, I think that's really going to reel me in hook, line, and sinker. But for me, the one thing that I would love to see is a hardcore mode when you actually play through the quest line, the storyline, and you're running around the world and all of that. You don't necessarily have to take some of the dumbed down things out, but you could leave some of those things, in. No, it's tough though. But I mean, it's one of those things where I think it would be minimal for the game's designers and developers to implement some of those things, just a kind of little tweak here, a little tweak there, raising of the hit points, that type of thing, to make it a little bit tougher as more of a seasoned, somebody who's been playing MMOs now for, closing on 20 years, would really like to see.
I have something a little different from you guys. Like, I don't know. I've one of my favorite things that I loved about EverQuest was that it made you feel powerful in the world that you were in based on your level. Okay? So let's say that I went out to East Commons, I killed some orcs, whatever, and let's say I leveled up a bit. There was a definite difference, and your player felt more powerful whenever you leveled up. Now, that's typical of most games, right? That your player seems more powerful as you level up. If you're saying yes, I disagree. It always feels like to me now in MMOs when I play them that as my character gets higher level, nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. Like, I never feel powerful because everything I'm always facing, it always gives me relatively the same amount of challenge. And if I go back to older zones, there's absolutely no reason to. There's no reason to go back to an older zone. Now, EverQuest was different in the fact that there were reasons to go back to older zones. You could camp, let's say you had a level 50 character, okay? You could go back and camp the, Stein of Mogok or Ogok or whatever it is, and you could sell that. You could make a drop and pick it up and then sell it and go do stuff. There was reasons to go back to some of the older zones, not just experience-wise, but you felt powerful in the world that you were in based on your character. And the way that it, like for Druid, as you went up in levels, you were able to teleport to different spots on the world. And be able to move those people. So as you leveled, not only were you more powerful, but you were more powerful to other people because of your use and your usability to other players' demands.
The power was much more horizontal instead of always just vertical with the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea that I want to come up with, and the implementation of it, I have no idea how you would go about doing this, is somehow fostering the idea that your player is still powerful in the world that you create, and not necessarily just keeping up with the challenges that you're faced with. And I know you still need those challenges, but like, let's say once a day, let's say it was an event once a day that you could do where you, and this is just spitballing an idea, you went into a zone and everything was like level 20. Maybe it was an instance if you wanted to. I don't know how I feel about instances still, but if you like that kind of thing, you go into an instance and the farm's under attack. Again, I'm going to use the beetle thing. The farm's under attack by beetles, but you're level 50. These beetles are level 5. Why are we not rewarded still for going and helping, even killing these level 5 beetles as a level 50? Now, this can be exploited, obviously, and there's challenges with it. But let's say you do it once a day, and it's an event. You go into town, and you do it, and you decide to do this event. You send out, and you just help the citizens. Or maybe you hurt the citizens. Or you do something mundane that's easy to do, gets you a nice little niche of experience, but you feel like you are at a certain level. You are now helping out people of lower means or lower, it's a way to foster your power in the world. Now, that's just one example. I don't know how you would do it, but for some reason, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with this, for some reason in EverQuest, I always felt like my character, whenever I hit that next level, it was a big deal. Like, those spells that you got at that level was a big deal. You being able to cast, Spirit of the Wolf on somebody was a big deal. Like,
it comes back to that. I mean, you're able to interact with the world in fundamentally different ways. Take Star Wars, right? The Star Wars tour. Not a single ability that any class received would ever be outside of their tool set. You know what I mean? Like, it was for that character, for that class, for fights that they were in. Done. Maybe some group buffs and some heals depending on your class, but there was no type of teleporting. There was no type of interaction outside of groups. It was flavorless. But in a game like EverQuest 1, just like you were talking about, the ports, that was such a huge deal. That was the difference between, being able to get somewhere in 5 minutes or 3 hours, depending on where you were. Binding somebody. You couldn't even bind yourself in that game. You couldn't even pick where you were going to die, where you popped up when you died. You had to have someone help you do that, and you better hope that class is around and they don't need to run from another zone, or you're going to pay for it. It's there. Everything has been everything like that, where there's true required interactions with the world have been stripped down to every player can do it. Every player is able to do all the things now because they're so concerned about making it so you can't, because the second people hear you can't do that, they'll go find a game that they can.
Yeah.
Because now WoW is there. WoW is there. If you want to do this, go play WoW. I've heard that so many times. Oh, you want to do 40-man raids? Go play WoW.
Yeah, and it's I think you summed up the best. It's that feeling, and I don't know if you guys get this feeling like I do, but that horizontal feeling, it's exactly it. You're never going up. You're always staying the same. Like, you're never getting more power. You're always just meeting the even requirements of whatever new zone that you're in. and there you are. And you're going to keep doing that until one of two things happen. You move on to the next zone where you're going to feel like you're on even par with what you're doing, or the zone becomes obsolete, you know,
Yep.
and there's no reason to ever go back. Does that make sense? Do you guys feel
Oh,
that way, or am I on my own here?
completely. No, and
Yeah.
instead of having, you know, a progression line that branches out like a tree, it's more like a spear. You know, you start at one point.
Oh, I think you cut out.
Oh, did I cut out?
Yep,
My
just for a
bad.
second.
Yeah.
But no, instead of kind of like a tree, or you know, even just a curvy line going through different abilities and points, it's a straight line from point A to point B. And when you get to point B, you're max level, you're done. You're not going to do anything outside of that. You're not going to be doing anything new that you didn't do at level 1 or 1 to 10. You know, it's just the same over and over with different power levels.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've discussed a lot of different things in this.
We have. We were
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah.
That's
So
all
I'm pretty much good to go. How are you guys feeling?
We can
It's great.
obviously tell this is something that we're all very passionate about.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
We could go on about MMO. We could make a whole podcast.
I could do this
about
for the rest of the
MMOs.
day, y'all. No
Yeah.
joke. No joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When-
Well,
These are clearly our passions.
Yeah, no doubt, and that's good. That's a good thing, and it is too bad that that it's kind of what it's like, and you guys are kind of nailing the head, but it's like gas stations. Gas stations are all in cahoots. If the station across the street raises their price 10 cents, the station over here raises their price 10 cents. But games aren't like that. And so I think that's where we're always going to find ourselves kind of disappointed with this stuff, where some of these things that we would love to have, we're just never going to get them simply because there are games like World of Warcraft that will forever cater to the masses and suck the resources away.
That's I mean, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. The only thing we can hope is just like World of Warcraft is constantly looking for the next big market. You know, hopefully one of these days. I mean, you have to remember, the MMO market's getting older. MMOs are new. There hasn't been a generation yet that has really lived through MMOs like we have. So I really do hope and think that one day in the future, a company like maybe even Blizzard is going to step up and say, hey, there's a subsect of the population that wants these values back. They want the difficulty. They don't want to walk through these games. And all we can hope at this point is that the company that really comes to that realization has the capability to develop it. That's my biggest concern. One of my and it's unfortunate, there was a big thing I would have loved to talk about today that I don't think we're going to have time to, and that's the beauty of Kickstarter and what it's allowing for these new MMO companies to do, particularly Camelot Unchained. I mean, they are now in a position to make a game that the world hasn't seen in decades on user-submitted money. They're not locked like a lot of these other companies are to basically market to the casual, which Guild Wars 2 is a perfect example of a game that started real fast out the gate and people had a lot of help for it, but the first 6 months of development went 100% into the casual community, and the entire hardcore community left. They all left. Every major guild was gone in the first 6 months of Guild Wars 2, and that game could have been the next big thing. So, yeah, hopefully with Kickstarter, we're going to see these types of games make a resurgence.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely want to see what Kickstarter comes out of that, and all the games they're trying to develop where they don't have to deal with a lot of the issues that a lot of these companies do. So, but that's again a whole nother topic. But what was that?
When are we going to put up our Kickstarter?
Yes. Yeah, to start our game with all our knowledge.
To be honest, having a podcast about Kickstarter funded games would probably be a really good idea.
Yeah.
I think whether it's games that are MMOs or whether it's some of these games that are coming out that are like the Mighty Number 9, that's a complete reboot on Meta Man, stuff like that. I think it'd be really good to talk about the amazingness that exists in the Kickstarter realm.
Well, maybe that'll be on our next topic of conversation.
Sounds great.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Well, listen, let's close it up.
Yep, I got to get out of here too.
Yep, I again am Elohim, and this is Co-Carnage and MMOden here on Twitch, and we thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hopefully you guys will come back for the third podcast. So thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Have a great day.
And scene.
We need the smack, right?
Yeah, done. Done. So, I feel like we were a little all over the place there, but I think it was a flow.
Really
The conversation flowed fine, and so I think people understood. But there's so many I mean, when you just say MMOs, there's so many facets to go into. I mean, we could spend a whole podcast on each and every one of the things that we talked about, easy. So, but I think people liked it. I think people hung out and stuck around. I mean, I still got 1,000 people in here, so. But yeah,
I got over 500 right now.
Yeah, so I'm glad you guys stuck around and enjoyed it.
There's two really good things we could do. First of all, I'm already getting just phenomenal feedback on the podcast so far. Like, everyone loves them. The first one, people just now, I mean, someone at Kinetsu just said, "I love these podcasts." Kinetsu, you're awesome.
Yes.
But there's two things that I think we could do. One, having a list of our questions beforehand, which we could come up with, or hell, even have our viewers submit. That could be really cool.